pick up your damn suffering and bear it. And try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together for Christ's sake so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in a corner and you can help plan the funeral. And you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus, obviously. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're doomed to spend Christmas with. So then you fix yourself up a little bit, kind of humbly, because how do you overcome the suffering of life? Is be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters.
That is pain. There's nothing like pain to convince you that your experience is real. I don't know anyone who isn't convinced that their experience is real by pain. And the only people I know that might be unconvinced just haven't had enough pain. Because if they did, they'd be convinced. There's no arguing it away. I've been suggesting to people, and I'll close with this. First of all, you have this moral obligation because you have this potential in front of you, and the hypothesis is that you should be approaching that, let's say, with courage and truth, and transforming it into the best that you can transform it into, because that's actually the world. And you do that locally. You do that to the limits of your power, and sometimes you don't have much power because you're not that competent, and sometimes you have a lot of power and you're very competent, but it doesn't matter. You have a certain amount of potential at hand, and you can either transform it into the order that's good, or you can do the opposite and generate a little bit of hell right here and now. And if enough of us do that, then we get a very large amount of hell right here and now. You're given a modicum of possibility to play with in your life, to do something with, to build something with. And what you build is dependent on your ethical choices. And it's the sum total of those ethical choices that create the world. Well, I ask people, for example, who do you admire? Because that instinct for admiration is part of the instinct for imitation. It's like, who do you admire? I've been telling the people that I talk to the same thing. It's like, you have a certain amount of potential within your grasp. You may find what you have contemptible because you're not in a position of power. This modicum of possibility that's been granted to you is beneath you. And so you do nothing with it. And so you get nothing from it. You take that seriously. You do the small things you can, the humble things that you can to put yourself together in those tiny, embarrassing ways that are real. And if you do that enough, you'll fortify yourself, and that will work. And
the only reason you're not rich is because you're young. That's the best. Really, if you look at the 1% even, the dreaded 1%, most of those people are old. Why? Well, when you progress through life, if you're reasonably successful, you trade in your promising youth for your wealthy old age, but you're still bloody old. Would you trade it? Would you trade your youth for that? Like if you factor age out of the economic equation, things look a lot different. Well, of course older people have more money. If they have any sense, they've been collecting it for their whole life. Is that somehow unfair? It's not unfair unless you want to be poverty-stricken when you're 70. And you don't want to be poverty-stricken when you're 70. There's no going back. But what you can learn is, yes, the world is terribly dangerous, far more dangerous than you think. And people are far more malevolent than you likely have the imagination to conceptualize. But there is way more to you than you know. And if you wouldn't look for safe spaces and retreat, if you would push out in the world and accept your responsibility and confront your limitations, then you would discover all sorts of things about you that you have no idea about. And then you would transform into something that's far more than what you are. And it's in that process of continual transformation that you'll actually find the essential meaning of life. There's a sacrificial element in maturation, right? You have to sacrifice the pluripotentiality of childhood for the actuality of a frame. And the question is, well, why would you do that? Well, one reason is it happens to you whether you do it or not. You can either choose your damn limitation, or you can let it take you unaware when you're 30, or even worse, when you're 40. And then that is not a happy day. And I see people like this, and I think it's more and more common in our culture because people can put off maturity without suffering an immediate penalty. But all that happens is the penalty accrues, and then when it finally hits, it just wallops you. Because when you're 25, you can be an idiot. It's no problem. Even when you're out in a job search, it's like, well, you don't have any experience and you're kind of clueless. It's yeah, you're young, it's no problem. That's what young people are like, but they're full of potential. Okay, well, now you're the same person at 30. It's like people aren't so thrilled about you at that point. It's like, what the hell have you been doing for the last 10 years? Well, I'm just as clueless as I was when I was 22. It's, yeah, but you're not 22. You're an old infant, right? And that's an ugly thing, an old infant. So, part of the reason you choose your damn sacrifice, because the sacrifice is inevitable, but at least you get to choose it. I teach students, and I was teaching them about stories and about the fact that our life is a story with a goal and a purpose and a beginning point. And I was encouraging them to develop their own stories. So I had them write an autobiography, and they really got into that. That was quite amazing. To identify, to break their life into epochs and then to describe the important episodes in each epoch, both positive and negative, and what they might do to reduce the possibility of the negative in the future and to capitalize on the positive, which is the purpose of memory, by the way. And then also to write a plan for the future. And so we formalized that. So the plan is, okay, first of all, you have to get yourself in the right mindset. And the mindset is you're trying to take care of yourself like you would care for someone that you cared for. That's a hard mindset to get into because people like their pets better than they like themselves often. And then you have to have a vision. And so the vision would be, well, okay, 3 to 5 years down the road, if your friendship networks were configured properly, what would that look like? If you were pursuing the career that would be appropriate for you and sustaining for you, what would that look like? How are you going to educate yourself? How are you going to take care of yourself mentally and physically? What do you want for an intimate relationship? And how are you going to handle temptations like alcohol and drug abuse? Because they take people down pretty frequently. So all you have to do is think about, okay, what could that be like if you had what you needed? Not some wild fantasy, but realistic in what you needed. So that's the first part. And then, okay, now write for 20 minutes about what your life could be like 3 to 5 years down the road if all of this came together. And then now do the opposite. So imagine all your weaknesses and all the ways that you can go down the wrong path. And then imagine that gets the upper hand. Then imagine where you are in 3 to 5 years. So then you get a polarity. It's like not this and yes this. So you can run away from the things you don't want. And you can run towards the things you do want. That gets your anxiety behind you instead of in front of you, right? Because maybe you're going to go do something difficult and you're afraid of it. And then you think, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to end up there. It's like, oh, okay, that's so terrible that this little terrible is nothing. So, and then in the next part of the exercise, you turn that into an implementable plan, and you write about why your life would be better and why your family's life would be better and why your community's life would be better. So it's like fully articulate. I think the best thing you can do with regards to your conscientiousness is to set up some aims for yourself, goals that you actually value. And the Future Authoring Program helps people do that. So once you set up that goal structure, let's say, and that's really in many ways that's what you should be doing. That's exactly what you should be doing, is trying to figure out who it is that you're trying to be, right? And you aim at that, and then you use everything you learn as a means of building that person that you want to be. And I really mean want to be. I don't mean should be, even those things are going to overlap. And it's important to distinguish between those, because that's partly, and this is back down to the micro routine analysis. So if I was saying, well, you're going to try to make yourself more industrious. Okay, number one, specify your damn goals, because how are you going to hit something if you don't know what it is? That isn't going to happen. And often people won't specify their goals too, because they don't like to specify conditions for failure. So if you keep yourself all vague and foggy, which is real easy, because that's just a matter of not doing as well, then you don't know when you fail. And people might say, well, I really don't want to know when I fail, because that's painful. So I'll keep myself blind about when I fail. That's fine, except you'll fail all the time then. You just won't know it until you've failed so badly that you're done. And that can easily happen by the time you're 40. So I would recommend that you don't let that happen.